Harry Mack, how's it going, man? Welcome to Nervous Habits.
Oh man, thank you so much for having me.
First things first, how you holding up with all this coronavirus stuff? I'm sure your fans are concerned about you, bro.
Oh yeah, man, I'm okay. I'm okay. We're good over here. It's crazy, no doubt about it. But luckily for me, I had kind of a lot of infrastructure built out on the internet as far as like me doing live streams and stuff like that. So I'm still able to stay active and stay productive. And yeah, I'm getting through it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've been checking out those streams. It's pretty miraculous, some of the stuff. The other day, I saw someone try to troll you. Put like a giant dick in the chat, and you just
Yeah.
you just rolled with it. That was
Oh yeah.
I'll be honest, man. I've seen dozens of videos of you performing. On Ellen, obviously, Joey Badass, Kendrick Lamar, but I haven't seen you do like a sit down conversation. I don't know if you do too many of those.
Oh, like what we're doing right here?
Yeah, man.
I've been getting into doing them. I've done a few podcasts, especially since this Corona stuff happened. I think, I'm on more people's radars. So, but I love talking about freestyling and creativity in general. So I'm excited to do this, man.
Dude, yeah, I got a feeling you got a lot to say. And watching you from the outside perform some of the freestyles is just like nothing I've ever seen before. And part of what I want to talk to you about is what's going on up here when you're performing, externally. But before we get there, I want to take a couple minutes to learn, how you went from Harry Mackenzie of Los Angeles to the freestyle rap wonder of Venice Beach, Harry Mack. Sound good to you?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, man.
So elementary school, Harry, think back, you were 5, 6 years old. You must have been killing those rhyming families in first grade, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I've always had a knack for words,
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, 5 or 6, nah, that age, because that's like kindergarten, right?
Yeah.
So I was still writing like a bunch of times on a piece of paper. I was dealing with the alphabet at that phase.
Okay. And what kind of kid? What kind of kid were you growing up? Were you a troublemaker? Did you play by the rules?
I pretty much played by the rules. I was afraid of getting in trouble, so I wasn't really like a rambunctious kid like that. But I was really social and I talked a lot. So I would like sometimes get in trouble just because I would be like talking to my neighbors during class. But I wasn't like throwing paper airplanes or doing pranks or anything like that. I was generally afraid of getting in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine too many like 5, 6-year-olds or pyros or they're experimenting with drugs or anything like that. But what about when you got to like middle school, high school, Harry? Did you were you sort of like a jock? Did you have an emo phase? Did you hang out with like the music kids?
Yeah, I was basically just a music nerd, man. I was super into music. I'm a drummer. That's my background. So my first instrument was the violin, and then when I was 7, and then I started playing the drums when I was 10. So by the time I got to middle school, like I was in jazz band playing drums, and I was just really, really obsessed with music. And at the same time, I was discovering how much I loved hip hop music, and really diving in on that. So I was kind of like in these two worlds where on the one hand, I was like a band nerd playing the drums and really into that. And then on the other hand, I was like hanging with other cool kids who were like really into rap and hip hop music. And so I was kind of like bouncing between those two worlds,
You got that Hannah Montana lifestyle, brother. You got like the two identities.
That's it, man. That's right.
It's so funny. So like, I'm not a musician, clearly, but I feel like all the most talented guys were drummers or are drummers, and just hearing your rhythm, man, it's not surprising to me at all that you started out in, doing drums.
Word. Yeah, man. I mean, that's a huge part of my sound and my style. I mean, to me, a freestyle is like a drum solo with words. So all the rhythmic information that I learned as a drummer, I'm basically just applying it directly to my rapping.
Yeah. Was there a moment think back, Harry? Can you think of the first freestyle rap that you did? Were you in the shower? Were you riding the bus? Can you remember what the first one was?
Well, I remember the first, I remember the first time that I lyrically improvised, but I don't know if it was a freestyle because I think there was like melody to it. But I was like in 3rd grade, and my mom one day was like, "You got to see this guy on this show. It's amazing what he does." And I was like, okay, I was in 3rd grade. And it turns out she was talking about Wayne Brady on Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Good show.
So, yeah. And so even though I was still in 3rd grade and like, I guess the show was technically like more of an adult show, I was like too young for it, right? She was like, no, you got to check this guy out. Like, I think you're gonna trip out, because I was already really into music,
Yeah.
even back then. So I watched it and I was just like, he did his thing where he brings somebody out of the audience and learns a few tidbits about them, what they do for work, where they come from, etc. And then he'll just create a song spur of the moment about them singing.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, that's impossible. Like, what's the magic trick? Like, okay, so like they plan this out ahead of time, or that person's a plant. Even as a third grader, I was just like, there's no way that is possible, to be that coherent off the top of your head and make something that sounds like a real structured song. And my mom was like, no, he's just that incredible at improvising. And so my little brain like exploded, and I was like, I gotta like check this out. I gotta try to figure out how to do that. And so I got really into it, and I would just be like, running around the house making up little songs. And my mom would encourage it. She'd be like, we'd be driving to the beach, and she'd be like, do a song about driving to the beach, And so those were my first freestyles, was me just like trying to do what Wayne Brady was doing on Whose Line back as a third grader.
Dude, that's amazing to hear that your parents encouraged you.
Yeah.
When you actually became a freestyle rapper, when you called your mom up, you said, "Mom, listen, I know I'm at USC to do drumming or whatever. I'm doing
Right.
freestyle rap." Were your folks still encouraging you, or are they like, I don't know, man, maybe you should stick to drumming?
It was somewhere in the middle, like, generally speaking, they've always supported my creative endeavors. They've always just been like, go for it, go do it. But yeah, when I first started saying things like, yeah, I'm really like leaning into the hip hop side of it more, I think they were a little, they were just unsure what that looked like, or what that even meant, or if it was possible, and how it would be possible for me to make that a stable career, which is funny in hindsight, because I'm actually much more successful now as a freestyle rapper than I was ever able to be as a jazz drummer hustling for bar and restaurant gigs, But I can understand, like, as parents, who, like, my parents don't listen to hip hop, that was always something that I did with my friends, I didn't get that from my parents, obviously. So, there's always a little bit of skepticism, I think, of like, we just straight up just like, they don't understand it. It'd be like, it's similar to like a kid being like, oh yeah, you go to Thanksgiving dinner and your uncle is like, well, what are you doing these days, Jenny? And she's like, oh, I run the social media accounts for this new like startup in the tech world. And it's like, you run the what media?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah, it's just like the older generation has no idea what this thing is that the younger person is pursuing, so they're a little skeptical. But now, that I've had a little bit of success doing this, my parents are 100% on board.
Dude, I'm so happy to hear that. And you mentioned that, you've had more success with freestyle than you ever did with another form of music. Was there one day, Harry, or one moment when you realized, damn, I'm really good at this, or, this could be my career rather than just a hobby?
Yeah, there was one moment, actually. Yeah, so I've been freestyling, like I said, since I was a little kid, and, had my groups in high school, groups in college, doing it all the time, loving it. And, but, I think I sort of fell into the sort of like societal trap of feeling like, well, I got my degree in this one thing, which is jazz drumming. That's what the piece of paper says I do. And that's what we like took out all these loans for me to do. So I guess that's what I ought to be doing. And, so I wasn't really pursuing the freestyling thing in any sort of professional capacity. It was just something that I was doing all the time because I loved it. And then what happened was my friend from the jazz world, his name is Jacob Mann, and he's an incredible jazz piano player and composer here in LA. We went to USC together. He hit me up one day and was like, hey man, I'm coming out with my jazz album. I want to do some like creative promo so that people know about the project. So what I did was I remixed one of my jazz songs, made it into a hip hop beat, and I would love for you to freestyle over my beat to help me promote my album.
Yo, that sounds really dope, man. I kind of want to hear that.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's the first ever Harry Mack YouTube video. Not on my channel, it's on his channel, but it's called Bounce House. Okay. And what it is it's me driving down Sunset Boulevard in his car, because my car didn't have an aux cord. Still have the same car. Still doesn't have an aux cord. So I drove his car. And we just did one take. Well, we did 1.5. There was a false start because he played the wrong version of the beat. So there was a false start, and then he was like, oh, my bad. Then he played the correct beat. We did one take. He filmed me on his iPhone, and I'm driving down Sunset, just pointing out the window, freestyling about these things that are occurring outside the car, like businesses were passing, whatever. And he's following me on his iPhone. And there was this one moment where there was this cyclist, you know, somebody on their bike ahead of us, and they were in our lane, so I had to slow way down.
Yeah.
But there was a bike lane that they could have been in. So I had this line where I said, yo, he doesn't use his left or his right brain. Why is he right here when he could be in the bike lane?
Oh,
and,
damn.
Yeah, so I called him out in the freestyle, you know, for not being in the bike lane. And that turned out to be an extremely significant line. So anyway, just hold that in your head. Sorry, it's a roundabout story, but I'm wrapping it up here. So what ended up happening was I did this favor for my friend Jacob Mann. We did the freestyle. It took all of 20 minutes. You know, I forgot about it. We got lunch afterwards. About a week later, I fall asleep for a nap, wake up from a nap, come outside. My roommate at the time goes, bro, you're going viral right now. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, you know, she goes, well, you're upvoted to #1 on Reddit videos, this video of you freestyling. Damn. And I was like, what's that? You know, because I was not an internet person. This was in December 2016.
Okay, but Reddit's the front page of the internet. You should know that.
I should know that. But
yeah.
I mean, I knew I'd heard of Reddit, but I didn't know like about subreddits or Reddit videos or upvotes. Like I really didn't know anything about it. Okay. And so she pulled it up and showed me. She was like, yeah, this is your video. Like it's more popular at this moment than any other thing on this Reddit videos page. And I was like, oh my God. And I went over to YouTube and started looking at it, and I would just refresh it, and it would go up by like a few hundred every time I refreshed it. And I had never experienced anything like that of like going low-key viral. And it didn't go crazy, I mean, in terms of virality on the internet, but it got 100,000 views overnight. And then it disappeared off of Reddit videos, you know, and that was its moment. So in its little 15 minutes of fame, it got 100,000 views. And I looked at that, and that's when I said, damn, this is where I should be putting my energy, because I knew that my friends and supporters always told me like, yo, you're super dope at freestyling. You should do something with that. And I would always just be like, yeah, whatever. You know, it's cool. But I didn't think it was that special. And then all of a sudden, these 100,000 people from outside of my community who don't know me were basically affirming that like, yo, this is something unique. And so just to wrap it up, the whole thing was everybody on Reddit said we staged it. They couldn't believe that it was a freestyle. But the bike lane line seemed to stand out and prove that it was actual improv.
You can't predict that guy's going to be not in the bike lane right in front of you guys. It's
exactly. And on top of that, Jacob busted out laughing when I said that, which it's very hard to fake that, you know. Yeah. You can tell if it's an organic reaction. And so people were like, nah, like you can tell the cameraman didn't know that was going to happen. And then the conversation was like, maybe he planned everything except that. It was this whole thing.
These conspiracy theorists on Reddit, man, they drive me crazy.
Oh, dude, you're telling me. But yeah, that was the moment back in December 2016. That's when I said, I gotta put more energy into this. If this is the response from just 20 minutes, just me messing around with my friend, filming it on a phone, why am I not pushing harder at this to see what I can build?
Yeah, and I mean, so almost 4 years ago, you're making the decision, follow your passion, do freestyle full time. Were you concerned about the viability of it as a career in the long run? Because as you said, you have a piece of paper from USC, you have loans, you're thinking, how am I going to make money off this? Was that in the back of your mind?
Not really, because I was just like, it probably should have been, but here's the thing. I went to school for a degree that isn't going to make you money either. I mean, it's not like jazz drummers are making money. You know, I didn't go to school for engineering. I didn't go to law school. You know, I was already like comfortable with the fact that I wasn't on a typical trajectory to like be financially stable. So I was used to just piecing things together, scraping together my income from little gigs here, teaching drum lessons there, whatever you can do to get the rent together. You know, that was already my mode. So when I just saw the reaction to it, I was like, okay, there's more, you know, there's more energy here surrounding this part of my creativity than there is surrounding my jazz drumming. So like, you know, I wasn't really worried about like, how will this work out financially? And I was in my, you know, I just turned 30. So then I was like, you know, 26 or something, or so I just wasn't really, I wasn't thinking like that, you know?
Yeah, man. And when was this? So like you know, let's make a little timeline. So this was before the Venice Beach video really exploded.
Yeah, this was before the Venice Beach video existed. This was the first ever Harry Mack hits YouTube.
Okay, December 2016, and then
Yeah.
everyone that follows you, that's seen you way before, you know, any this stuff with Ellen, you did the freestyle in Venice Beach, and then that got millions of views. So when was that?
That was in February 2017.
Okay.
So what happened was after this Bounce House video, I was like, let me try to do this. And so I got back with Jacob Mann because he had already had some success on YouTube. He does comedy stuff as well, like music comedy. It's great. He's brilliant. So I got with him and I was like, yo, man, I don't know anything about this. What do you think I should do?
Right.
And, you know, he was like, yeah, man, I just think just make a YouTube channel and start making your own stuff. And, you know, you don't need me. Just start building your community and keep doing what you're doing. And I think it'll pop off. So that's what I did. I made a YouTube channel and I told myself I'm going to do one video a week. And I set that deadline, and I was like, you know what? Even if it gets to the end of the week, close to the deadline, and I have nothing, I'll just freestyle at my phone. You know, I'll do something every week, and I stuck to that. And we did a video every week until we got to February 2017. So just a couple months later, a month and a half later or so, and we had the first Venice Beach video, which is the first video I ever had that like truly went viral.
So I think Facebook picked that up. If you remember, because I was in New York, this was a couple years ago. I think there's a Facebook page called Now This or something. I think someone shared it on Facebook, then it exploded. I want to know though, how many hours were you standing out there, you know, spitting those verses? Because I've seen clips and clips of that. It just seems like you're there all day.
Yeah, we were there all day. We were there for probably like 6 or 7 hours.
Wow.
And we filmed a ton of freestyles. And, you know, excuse me, we got rejected a lot. Store owners coming out being like, get out of here, you know, don't film here, all that type of stuff. But luckily, Venice Beach has this culture where, like, if you're going to be able to get away with it anywhere, it's going to be there. You know, it's loose enough and crazy enough, and there's enough street performances, and there's enough insanity always going on all the time at Venice Beach that, you know, you don't really need permits to film. You can just you can do what we ended up doing. Yeah. So it worked out. Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to Venice Beach later, but one more thing I want to ask you, man, how do you not breathe? Do you breathe through your ears? Because if you watch this guy spit freestyle, it's literally like you'll talk probably for about 90 seconds without taking a breath. I mean, is that like some sort of strategy?
No, it came about organically because I had so many words that I wanted to say in such a short period of time. It was like I didn't really have time to breathe.
Yeah.
But,
shit.
Yeah. No, I don't have gills or anything like that. I don't know how to circular breathe. It's actually problematic. I have had problems where I'll like lose my voice and stuff, you know. So more recently, in the last year or two, I've had to actually, I took a couple vocal lessons and I've had to actually like start learning about breathing techniques, so that I'm not just out there screaming without breathing for an hour and destroying my vocal cords.
Have you ever tried to hold your breath underwater?
No.
I'm curious if you're one of those guys, like that guy, David Blaine or something, who held his breath for like 7 minutes. If you could do something like that.
Yeah, that would be dope. Well, it's funny you mention him because I'm very much compared to him frequently. The David Blaine of freestyle.
See, I didn't even know that, man. It's just it's organic. So I do want to like pick your brain a little bit because you got a lot going on inside of here, and I want people to like get a glimpse into your psyche. So are you familiar with the psychological concept of flow? And it's not like, yo, check out Harry Mack's flow. It's like the flow state.
Like flow state. Yeah, I am familiar. Yeah.
Okay, because I think this theory is the perfect encapsulation of your work as a freestyle rap artist. So I want to chat with you about that and see if this fits your headspace, all right?
Dope. Let's do it.
So it was conceptualized by this guy. His name is Mihao Csikszentmihalyi. He had, you know, these academics have like 9-syllable names. And he discovered that in the flow state, when someone is you know, thinking this way, doing creative activities, you don't actually feel the passage of time, Harry. It's like it goes beyond being in the zone. One musician said it's like an ecstatic state to such a point that you feel as though you don't exist. Your hand seems devoid of itself, and you just sit there watching in a state of awe and wonderment, and the music flows out of itself. So have you experienced this flow state either while performing freestyle or in the process of preparing and writing music more generally?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I have experienced it. I always strive to experience it. But ironically, if you try to experience it, I think that makes it impossible to experience it. It's more about not trying at all. But yeah, all the time you enter into a state when you're freestyling where it's just everything is moving exactly how it needs to move for the lines to land exactly when they need to land without me really like getting in the way. And it feels sort of like it's more about me just getting out of the way and letting the freestyle happen at that point.
Wow. Are you a neuroscience guy, Harry? Because you sound like you know what you're talking about.
Well, I've thought about flow state a lot, you know? I teach lessons in freestyle, so I've really like sat back and thought like, yeah, what is going on when I do this? And I think it's not always that I'm in a flow state, but every time you freestyle, it's mandatory that you be non-judgmental, right? Of your own self. So if you can't get past that, you know, if you can't mute the voices of criticism that are saying, was that good? You know, could this be better? Should you really say that? If you're not able to mute those voices, you'll never be able to freestyle. So, I love that part about freestyle where it forces me into a non-judgmental state. And there's only one thing to be said at every moment. And it's the obvious thing that's already coming out of my mouth. Do you know what I mean?
Dude, so it's all forward looking. Once the word leaves your mouth, you don't think about it. It's said, move on.
Exactly.
And I actually do have a little bit of a neuro background. So let me sort of talk through what's going on, because there's truth to what you just said. So Harry, our nervous system, it turns out, is only capable of processing 110 bits of information per second. And in order for you to hear me and understand what I'm saying right now, you need to process about 60 bits per second. So that's why you can never understand more than two people talking to you at once. And so when you're involved in a freestyle, Harry, you don't actually have enough you don't have enough attention to monitor how your body's feeling. You can't feel if you're hungry. You can't feel if you're tired. Your body sort of, like you just described, disappears from consciousness. So have you felt before, maybe you're freestyling for hours and then you realize, well, shit, I haven't actually eaten anything all day.
Yes. 100%. What you just described, it makes so much sense to me, man. Yeah.
And you know, maybe so let's say you're performing the flow state state. You're freestyling to people in line. You mentioned it's sort of like unconscious, it's just happening on its own. Yeah. Is there any sort of thought process going on, or do you really just feel like it's so organic that you're stepping aside and letting it happen naturally?
It's more the latter. It's more that I'm trying to step aside and just let it happen naturally. But, you know, there's a little bit of a thought process when I'm doing, like, you're talking about like the 7-minute continuous freestyle in the line, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
So I'm rapping about people who are waiting in line to get into some event. I don't even know what they were waiting for. But, the interesting thing is when I'm doing those videos, they're part of my Gorilla Bars series, which is me freestyling in public for strangers.
It's amazing. Check that out on YouTube and Twitch. We'll provide all the info later in the episode.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. Yeah, that does have an added component of social awareness. So I can't just go out and start rapping at everyone, regardless of the energy they're giving back to me. So sometimes, like in the line, there were some people who clearly did not want to participate in what was happening. Yeah. And I have to save a little bit of mental CPU, so to speak. I have to reserve a little bit of my brain energy to be able to assess that so that I cannot like really piss anybody off and like keep the vibe cool, you know? So that's happening all the time. This sort of like social reading of the vibe and like being like, okay, this person is not down. Just skip over them, you know, don't rap about them. That's just going to aggravate them. Meanwhile, this person over here is nodding their head and looking over to me. Let me go over there and see if I can build on that energy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, dude, your EQ is off the charts, but what I've also noticed about you is you can sort of like change people's minds. You can swing the pendulum. Like there was this one guy, you said something about his Boston hat. He walked inside because he couldn't believe it. He came back out. At first, he was a non-believer. He's like, it's like, why the hell is this guy talking to me? Leave me alone. But by the end of it, you saw in his face, he's just like, holy shit, this guy has a gift. Do you remember what guy I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he was the best one.
Yeah, that was really good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, swaying people, man. I mean, that's the goal, right? So it's like, if they're not giving me a hard no, right? If I'm not reading their energy as like, not today, right? Because that's one thing. If somebody's just like, not today, not having it, move on, bro. I'm like, cool. You know, I don't want to obviously mess with that. I'll just move on. Yeah. No judgment, because I've had those days too. You know, it's fine. But if they're just kind of like, what is this? Then I'm like, okay, here's an opportunity for me to try to do what I do. And if I feel like I'm starting to win them over, maybe I'll lean in more. So again, it's like a social dance. It's like flirting with somebody at a bar, you know, like you're at a bar trying to meet somebody that maybe you want to date, you know, or sleep with or whatever. And so you like, if they're giving you like the strong no, you know, probably don't approach that person, you know, they don't want that. But if they're just kind of like, probably not, but let me see what you got, then maybe you'll engage in a conversation and see if you can, you know, make them laugh and start to win them over. And so it's a similar kind of social dance that I'm doing while I'm making those videos.
So part of this calculus is not just verbal, but nonverbal communication. Like that expression, 98% of communication is what you know, is not words, is your body. You got to be reading that the entire time.
100%. Yeah.
So I do want to go back to flow for a sec, my man. Yeah. I want to show you a visual real quick. And you know, you're thinking, you're going to see this and you're thinking, oh shit, I have to do math. I haven't seen one of these since middle school. But check this out, Harry. So have you seen this before?
No.
So the bottom axis, x-axis, is the difficulty of the task you're doing.
Right.
The y-axis is the skill of the person. You still with me, brother?
Yeah, got you.
So if the difficulty is too low and the skill is too high, it leads to boredom.
Right.
If the difficulty is too high and the skill is too low, it leads to anxiety. So let's say you're just starting out, you know, your skill is low and it's a high difficulty, you know, maybe the beat's really fast. You're going to be in the anxiety state. Right. Whereas let's say right now you're at high skill and, you know, the beat is really slow. You're going to be bored. Right. So in this context, Harry, flow is finding that perfect balance between difficulty and skill. Have you experienced either the boredom or anxiety state, you know, in your art form?
Absolutely, man. This graph is really dope, bro. I'm gonna use this.
I didn't make this up, man. This is me how chicks sign me out. This is a very you know, well-known piece of psychology. But yeah, for sure.
100%, man. Yeah. So basically, I have experienced this all the time. I mean, you know, if basically like I experience the boredom if it's just a regular mid-tempo hip-hop beat and I'm just being asked to rap with simple words, you know, that doesn't really challenge me enough at this point. And so, you know, I'm always looking for new ways to make it crazier. Like, can I rap in double time, you know, or can I put an overarching story over the whole freestyle, but still incorporate random words and summarize them all to, you know, I'm always looking for new ways to increase the difficulty to match the skill level as I get better. So this makes a lot of sense to me.
It's also like, Harry, do you play video games? I know you're busy, you're on your purpose, but if you ever play video games, if a video game is too easy and you're really advanced, you're bored. If a video game is too difficult, you know, and you're low skill, you're anxious. There was a game years ago. Have you heard of Flappy Bird?
I've heard of it, but I've never played it.
So Flappy Bird is this game. It's not very good, but it's very simple. You're a bird and you have to like flop in between the pipes and not get hit. And it was criticized as being too difficult. And the reason is when people were playing, they couldn't get in that flow state. You know, if you're playing a game, you're really into it. Because they were stuck in the anxiety state. So it's helpful for people to hear that for you, it's important to find that balance where depending on, you know, maybe one day you're feeling off, one day you're feeling really on, you have to find that perfect difficulty.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think applying, you know, what I do to that chart too, like there are times when it moves into the anxious arena. And usually what that is like people trying to overlay too many different rules and restrictions on top of the freestyle performance. For example, you'll be in situations like I went on the Ellen show, right?
Yeah, dude.
You obviously can't swear on the Ellen show. So that's okay. Like I've gotten used to that overlay, right? That I can manage that. But the first time I was ever told like, yeah, but you can't swear.
Like, shit.
Even if I don't swear all that much in my freestyles, like I'm not like a particularly vulgar MC as far as that goes, but I do swear freely if I feel like that's how it should be said, right? So just trying to navigate the fact that now there's a restriction on what I can or can't say, I'm like, oh, that's different, you know. Now I have to apply some of my mental CPU to making sure I don't accidentally cross that line. So when I now will get into that anxious state and this happens all the time, is people are like, oh yeah, man, like, can you just like come on and do a freestyle? It'll be fun. And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And then I get there and they're like, cool. So we want you to mention our event. It happens every other Tuesday in August. And actually normally it starts at 11 a.m., but this week it's going to start at 10 a.m. Oh, and when you talk about the event, it's a barbecue, but you can't say BBQ because we can't actually, and like also, so there's going to be between 2 to 250 people. And when that starts happening, for me, that's like the difficulty getting way too high for my skill level. It moves me into that anxious because as of yet, I haven't figured out how to maintain all of those overlays in my focus, and they conflict. So it's like there's these overlapping requirements, and I have to find what fits and passes through that gate. You know, and all of that while trying to improvise lyrics in rhythm and be clever is too much. So that's when I'll enter that anxious area.
Dude, I feel like, okay, so you're spitting some knowledge, like actually. So this mental CPU analogy is beautiful, but specifically what you're saying about the restrictions, it goes back to what we're talking about, forward looking versus backwards looking. Because if you have all these restrictions, you can't curse, you know, you have to mention the barbecue, but you can't say BBQ, what have you. Then what you're doing is you're monitoring yourself. You're being very, very self-aware, very, very present, as opposed to, like you said before, the out-of-body experience. Let it happen. Once the words are released, don't look back. So it makes sense.
Yes, 100%, man. Improv is improv. And to me, I'm like, look, and I tell people this now, I'm like, at this point, I might as well just write you a verse, you know, because there's so many requirements that it's like, it's not improv anymore, you know? It's just going to be bad improv. And you wanted me to be a part of your thing because you think I'm a great improviser. So let me improvise, you know? And so, I think that improv has to be respected as its own type of art form. And it's different, you know? You can't just overlay as much as you want onto the improv because you stifle the improvisation.
1,000,000%, man. And when we get to the freestyle later, you do you, man. If you got to drop a couple F-bombs, you know, we're tagged explicit on Spotify and Apple, so don't worry about it.
Thank you,
So,
man.
Harry, what motivates you, brother? When you wake up in the morning, some people, especially with COVID, they're just like, you know, what am I getting out of bed for? You know, people are down. What, on a day-to-day basis, even before this, motivates you? What drives you?
Man, you know, for whatever reason, from when I was a little kid, music grabbed me, man. And I wanted, like, from the first times I heard music, I wanted to not be a listener, but an active participant. And I've just been hooked ever since. You know, I'll tell a little story because, you know, my dad, when I was like 3 or something, I was like still just like reaching up and holding my dad's hand everywhere. We went to this music store and, you know, I was looking around and I fixated on this pedal, and the music store guy was like, hey, do you want to press that and see what it does, you know? And I looked up at my dad, you know, and he's like, yeah, go ahead, you know? And like, they have to lift me up and put my foot on the pedal. And I wasn't strong enough with my leg to push it down. So like my dad pushed me down and made the pedal go. It turns out it was the bass drum pedal. And the beater smacked the bass drum and it went boom, and the vibration shot through my whole tiny little body. And I was just like, yes, that is it. That is what I'm supposed to do. That is all I want to do. That's all I care about doing, is feeling more of that. And it was magical, man. And I've never forgotten that. And so I've just been hooked on music my whole life. And I have always felt this strong motivation to try to improve and become better at music. And I think, you know, for me, I was always really bad at sports, like terrible athlete, like always picked last. I hated it, you know.
I hate that shit, yeah.
Yeah. My parents made me play soccer because, you know, you got to, I mean, as a parent, like you want your kid to be active, you know, in some way. So like I had to play soccer, but I hated it. I hated the games, hated the practices, never good at it. I just don't have that bird's eye view of like visualizing the field or the court. I can't like, it doesn't make sense to me, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think I leaned into music because I'm not competing with others, and I'm not letting down my teammates. I'm just competing with my own current level. So I was like, this is beautiful. This is this thing where, and I didn't conceptualize it like this at the time, but I think now looking back, you know, it was like, here's this arena where, I have a little spark for it. There's some amount of, you know, natural talent, whatever that is, maybe. But even without that, this is an arena where I can work hard to just get better without being in competition with other humans or fear that I'm letting other humans down. And once I started to practice and see improvement, it motivated me. And it has continued to motivate me. So I don't know like where that comes from, what the source of that motivation is, but I'm just constantly motivated by music and by the potential that by investing more time into my skill set, it can grow and improve. And so that alone, you know, and outside of that, it's like, you know, going outside motivates me. You know, I love to go on walks, you know, reading. I love to read, you know, there's a lot of things.
Filling out the dating profile here. I appreciate
exactly.
I appreciate that, brother. What about, I mean, you know, as a musician, you know, you have the constant threat of rejection and of failure. How do you deal with criticism, for example? Let's say you're doing one of your YouTube live shows and someone types out in the comments, "You stink, Harry Mack." How do you internally deal with that?
It's hard, you know, I'm not gonna lie. Like in the beginning, especially because I wasn't an internet person, so I wasn't really aware of all these trolls and people out here who are doing this professionally, you know, so to speak. But yeah, you know, I think basically every time that somebody disses you, you get thicker skin, and then you're less affected by people who are dissing you. You know, like you build up a tolerance to that. So I was, you know, in music my whole childhood, and so, you know, I would like go to jazz camp and be in an ensemble, and the leader of the ensemble would be like, "Harry, you're dragging," you know, like the Whiplash movie or whatever.
Yeah, I love it. Great movie. I knew you liked that movie as a jazz fan.
Of course. The jazz community actually finds it highly controversial, but I'm a fan. It was a great movie. I liked it. But you know, the ballet community finds a lot of problems with Black Swan. You know, it is what it is. Yeah. But yeah. So, you know, I was used to being criticized, but that's a little different than somebody being like, "You suck, I hope you die," which is the type of stuff you read on the internet. You know, it's just way crazier when they have no personal connection to you and they just want to tear you down. But yeah, so I kind of had a tolerance from just getting critiques through my childhood, learning music. And then once I like entered into the wild world of the internet, I started to get really used to that type of thing, you know, and so at this point, generic insults like your example, "Wow, you suck, Harry, quit rap, like you're terrible," they don't elicit any kind of emotional response. You know, I really don't feel those at all. The ones that do affect me are ones where I'm like, yeah, there might be some truth in that. You know, things that I've thought myself, insecurities that I have inside my own brain, like they're not in the format of "you suck at rap, you should quit." You know, that's way too broad. Like I'm beyond believing that has any validity to me, you know. But if it's something where I'm like, wow, like, yeah, you might be right about, you know, you're way better at freestyling than writing songs, you'll never make it in the current musical climate because you'll never release an album that makes it to radio. It's like, oh God, like, that could be true, you know.
Nah, fuck all those people, man. I listen to Proof. I listen to Napoleon. Like you got some good original music out there.
Thank you. Appreciate it, bro.
But I hear that, man. I really do, and I think that's the mindset that you got to have to continue to be successful. You talked about before. You talked about improving and continuing to compete with yourself. Are you familiar with the 1% rule?
Not really. I mean, I've heard of it, but I don't exactly know what that is.
It's just the idea that if you get 1% better every day for a year, at the end of the year, you'll be like 30, 40 times better than where you started. So in terms of like your process, man, people speculate. People are like, you know, you weren't born this brilliant. Do you, like, when you talk about improvement, do you sit around reading the dictionary? Do you watch your old freestyles to improve? What's your process look like?
Yeah, great question. I have never read the dictionary, although that is a thing that legendary rappers have, according to the folklore, actually done. I don't have the attention span to do that, I don't think. The biggest way in which I absorbed like the linguistics of it all was just by listening to a ton of rap music, starting from when I was young. So my mom always said I was a sponge, you know, whatever I gave my attention to, I became like that, you know? And so, as all of us are to an extent, you know, but I think I'm really that way. Like I can just absorb things. And so, I've just been listening to rap constantly since I was a kid and not listening casually. You know, I've never really been a casual music listener ever, you know? It's always captivated my mind. Like if the music is on, it's hard for me to do anything else. I could never play music while I was writing papers in college. You know, luckily I didn't have to write that many papers, but I could never do that while listening to music at all. You know, sometimes if we play music at a kickback with friends, and if it's like something I'm interested in musically, like my brain is going to be pulled that way a little bit and I'm less engaged in the conversation. So
what is a kickback, Harry?
Oh, you know, hanging out with people, you know.
I've never heard that. It must be a California thing. I'm from New York.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't say that.
What would you call like a smaller hang?
We'd say chillin'. We'd say hanging.
Chill session.
Chill session, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool, yeah. Kickback is like as opposed to party. You know, party is a lot of people, loud, rambunctious. Kickback is just a few friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the big thing is I've absorbed a ton of hip hop music. I freestyle daily, so you know, daily practice is a huge part of how I've been able to develop. You mentioned watching, you know, the game tapes essentially, right? Like reviewing the old freestyles. Luckily, I have been able to do that since I started creating content for YouTube, whether I like it or not, and sometimes it's actually a miserable experience. I am now required to watch hours and hours of myself freestyling while I'm editing the video content for YouTube. So I basically hear everything back at some point or another while I'm working on the editing process for the content. So I've heard myself freestyle many, many times. I've had tons of opportunities to be like, oh, I don't like that. I should work on that. And I think that's the big thing, right? Is like, you talk about practice and, you know, people think that practicing is just like rapping every day. And it is, that's part of it. But, you know, luckily because I've been playing instruments my whole life, I was taught how to practice. You have to learn how to practice. And, you know, there's playing the instrument and there's practicing, and they're different. Playing is just freestyling and doing what you already know how to do. Practicing is doing the really difficult work of saying, this is what I'm not good at. So let me try to come up with a strategy for how I can work on this area and try to improve on the things that I'm not so good at. And so I'm constantly assessing, you know, okay, I use a classic example. I use too many filler phrases. Anyone who's watched my videos, like I say, yo, it's Harry Mack.
Harry Mack.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but man, I like okay, so like again, you know, the trolls in the YouTube comment section, like that's the only thing that they can find fault with is like you say your name. I think, dude, you got a good name, man. If your name was like your name was Meow Chickside Meow, you wouldn't be like, yo, it's Meow Chick. You know what I mean? Like, but it's funny you talk about like watching yourself back. You must feel pretty good, you know, once in a while, man. You know, you have these lines, and I think about obviously the famous one from Joey Badass. On the freestyle chemist like Walter White. You must be watching that back and just thinking, like, how the hell you have this eureka moment, this aha? You must be trying to like put that in a bottle. Do you know what I mean? Like, like that line was not obviously pre-planned.
No.
So I mean, like when that happens and when you watch it back, how do you feel? Like you want to replicate that?
Yeah, it's dope. It's dope. You want to replicate it, right? But the thing is, you can't. And so it's this concept like from the jazz world, right? Jazz music is improvisational music. It's all made up on the spot, you know, but it's based on a structure, right? So, you know, when you're a jazz improviser, you basically know that like 85 to 90% of the stuff that you play is directly related to stuff that you've practiced. Right? So when we say it's improvised, it's not like you're literally pulling things completely out of thin air that you've never considered before. Quite the opposite. It's mostly stuff that you've practiced, right? That's like flowing through you kind of in the moment, and you're applying it to what's happening in that moment. But there's still room for that top 15 or 10% of like true inspiration, you know, whatever that means, or the magic, you know, and I think this relates to kind of the flow state you're talking about potentially, where it's like, that's what you hope you hit. And you don't hit that every time. You're not always able to grab that. But I would say the Joey video is a perfect example of this concept where 90% of the freestyle is like kind of normal Harry Mack freestyle stuff that, you know, not that I've said it before, but that it's basically in line with like the sort of techniques that I use of stringing words together. And then there was this moment where, because I was coincidentally watching Breaking Bad for the first time
I knew
at
it.
the time that I went on the show, my brain just, that's what I thought of. And I was like, it was there up in that 10% like sky high level. And I just grabbed it and I said it and it did what it did. And, you know, that can't be 100% of the performance. That's not possible. And if it was, then that would just become your 85% and you'd still be reaching for that higher 10. You know what I mean?
There's a concept in psychology. It's called priming. And priming is like, you know, if a word has multiple meanings, let's say the word is bank, Harry, and it could be riverbank or it could be financial bank. If we're talking about numbers all day, numbers, and then someone comes in and says, hey, how about the bank? I'm going to think bank. But if we're talking about geography for some weird reason, and then someone says, yo, check out that bank. So priming in this context is so interesting because your brain was primed to think Breaking Bad. And you just, you know, that was in that well and you just went in, took a ladle and you scooped it out, which I think it just shows how you've maximized these cognitive heuristics in your mind. You're making full, you know, you got a whole toolkit. You're making use of everything you got up there. I'm
trying to, man. I'm trying to.
So you talked about how you freestyle every day. When you work out at the gym, Harry, you need to give yourself time for your body to recover. That's how muscles are built. Okay. So is there any, you know, off day? Is there, you know, when was the last time you just didn't freestyle for 24 hours?
I take breaks, you know, but I you know, because I don't freestyle all day. Like, it's not like the whole time I'm awake I'm freestyling. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the last time I really didn't do it at all at any point. You know, at least like a line here or there. You know, I'll just be alone for a moment. You know, and I'll think of a, you know, what would I rhyme with that? You know, it's a blessing and a curse, man. It's crazy. Once I turn on the switch, to say that my brain is going to be in freestyle improv mode, it's hard to get back to how it was before that, you know? I feel like when I go to sleep at night, I kind of reset and I wake up in the morning and I don't just hop out of bed and start freestyling. So there's this window of time that's probably kind of sacred, you know, to my sanity and well-being where I'm not really in that mode and I get to do my morning routine and get the day started and sip my coffee and write in my journal, not raps, you know, write things that don't rhyme. But yeah, once it's like, if I do a live stream that day, for example, especially 2 hours of freestyling, from that moment on, like, my brain is freestyling.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't think of, you know, like maybe Thanksgiving last year, you just took a day off or anything like that. It's just every day you wake up, you get into the groove, you go to bed, you reset. Pretty
much, yeah. I mean, there's some days where I only freestyle for like 5 minutes inside my head. You know,
inside your head.
That's like, you know, like, so I didn't really go to the gym, but I randomly busted out 10 push-ups at one point when I was bored. You know, I guess it's the equivalent to that. Yeah.
It's all about the reps, man. Do you ever, I'm sure people have wondered, do you ever get sick of it? I mean, it must be so exhausting. You think about going on a first date. You got to be on. You got to be on, especially in the YouTube culture. Do you get tired of having to just constantly freestyle 24/7, 365 days a year?
I never get tired of it. It's crazy. And I've been doing it since I was a kid. But the thing is, it's different every time. And I never fail to get the adrenaline rush. I always get there. And it's crazy, man. It's like it just doesn't get old to me. And, you know, because I'm always trying to get better at it, too. So I'm always trying to challenge it in new ways. Like, anytime it's like, okay, this is easy, and it's kind of like I'm coasting at whatever level I'm at, then it's like, I wonder if I could freestyle a narrative story. You know, I can't, by the way. It's extremely difficult. But, like, let me try that, you know? Or I wonder if I could apply this to the freestyle. So there's always new things that you can throw into it. So I never really get bored.
Because of this right here. Because that's what I'm thinking. Because you're up in boredom and you want to move back to flow. It makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
And right now, Harry, you know, you're writing and recording original music. Obviously, you know, you've got a bunch of hits on YouTube. Proof, Napoleon Hill, next year, all certified bangers. Make sure to check those out. What's your goal? Where do you hope the original music will take you?
Yeah, I mean, I just I'm very happy to say that I'm a full-time creative musician, and that is how I support myself. So for so long, that was the only goal, get to a point where I can do music full time and I don't have to have a job. And so I've been in that space now for several years. And so I just want to be able to continue living as a full-time creative artist. If I can do music full-time, then I'm happy. When I have to do other things because the music's not cutting it financially, I'm not very happy. I have a very low tolerance for that. It's like, okay, this sucks. So yeah, but beyond that, I mean, once, hopefully we can leave our houses at some point here in the future. I would love to travel the world, and there's so much of the world that I haven't seen. And music is a great way in which you're able to do that if you reach a certain level. So that would be awesome. I would love to just make more recordings and try to make pieces of content, whether it's music recordings or video freestyles or whatever, but try to make things that could maybe one day be looked back on and considered classics. That's what I would love to do. And there's no way that I can guarantee that happens, but I'm just going to keep trying to build my skill set up. And I think it would be incredible to make things that people would one day say, oh, that was a classic moment,
Yeah. I mean, so it sounds like all you want is freedom. You want the freedom. That's why people, try to do passive income, because they want financial freedom, the freedom to live your dreams, Harry.
Yes.
Have you like freestyled in Europe or anywhere around the world, or it's mainly just in America?
It's been mainly just in America. Let me think though. Where have I traveled? I don't think I've ever traveled internationally to freestyle. Nope. I've only but I have traveled the U.S., all corners of the U.S. to freestyle.
Okay, because
they rap and perform.
Brother, they would love you. And I was just in Europe a couple months back. They would love you there if you're sitting in like Madrid in the city square, or in Paris, man. I think you could build like a worldwide following.
Oh, absolutely, man. I would love it. I've been to Europe. Me and my girlfriend went last year when she turned 30, so we got to go out there, and it was amazing. And we were in Venice, Italy, and I was like, how crazy would it be to do the Venice freestyle, because I'm known for the Venice Beach freestyle. So, but I didn't have the what I would need to make the video.
The first line of that could have been like, I'm back in Venice, but not the beach. I mean, you gotta like you can work with it. You know what I mean? I'm not.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not. But listen, man. Yeah, you could take it.